I can still hear the soft clink of Marcus Langston tapping his champagne flute against the crystal, the sound cutting through the murmur of the rehearsal dinner like a blade. The sprawling Langston estate in the Hamptons glowed under warm chandeliers, the ocean whispering beyond the manicured lawns. 200 of New York's elite lawyers, bankers, media executives turned toward him expectantly. Then his eyes found me in my quiet corner. "Ava Sinclair," he said, voice carrying effortlessly. The visionary behind the Ether Technologies campaign that just flipped the entire digital advertising industry on its head. "I've been chasing her for months, trying to hire her, acquire her agency. Anything. She won't return my calls because she's too busy being brilliant." The silence that dropped was absolute. My mother's hand froze midair. The federal judges practiced composure cracking. My father stared like he'd never seen me before. My older sister Sophia looked physically ill. And I, finally, after years of being erased, felt the weight lift just a little. But to understand how sweet that burn felt, you have to know how deep the cuts went before that night. My name is Ava Sinclair. At 32, I own Lumina Digital Strategies, the agency I started from a tiny Brooklyn apartment 5 years ago with nothing but student loans, grit, and a laptop. Today we have offices in Manhattan and Los Angeles, a team of 22, and clients most agencies only dream about. We don't just run ads, we engineer behavior at scale with AI-driven personalization. Ether Technologies' 25% market share jump in 1 quarter? That was us. The New York Business Council called me Innovator of the Year last year. I have a corner apartment overlooking the Hudson, a Tesla in the garage, and passport stamps from places my family has only seen in magazines. None of them knew, because I stopped telling them years ago. I grew up the black sheep in a family that prized the law above everything. My father, Robert Sinclair, is managing partner at Sinclair Legal Group, one of the most powerful corporate firms in New York. My mother, the Honorable Elena Sinclair, is a federal judge with a reputation for dismantling white-collar fraud. My sister Sophia, 3 years older, was everything they wanted, valedictorian at Yale, Harvard Law, now a named partner at a rival white shoe firm after winning a 9-figure securities fraud case that made headlines. "The law is our legacy," my mother liked to say at every gathering, conveniently ignoring that I graduated summa cum laude from NYU Stern with a marketing degree. Whenever I tried to share good news, it was immediately swallowed. Thanksgiving 2019. I just landed my first major client, a national retail chain whose online revenue tripled after my campaign. I brought an expensive bottle of wine to celebrate. My uncle asked what I did again. Before I could answer, Sophia laughed and said, "Ava does the internet thing, you know. Ads and memes for companies." The table erupted in polite chuckles. My mother immediately pivoted. "Sophia just argued a case before the Second Circuit. Did you see the write-up in the Law Journal?" I was erased in seconds. Christmas 2020. Sophia announced her engagement to Daniel Langston, heir to the Langston media empire. My parents were over the moon about the alliance. When I mentioned I was expanding my agency, my father asked if I still had time for that little hobby with all my free time. Easter 2021. Wedding planning dominated the meal. When I said I was too busy scaling the company to date, my mother sighed. "At least one daughter will give us grandchildren before her biological clock runs out." July 4th. 2021, my grandmother's birthday. I arrived late because I was closing the 7-figure Ether contract. No one noticed. They were too busy admiring Sophia's engagement ring. When I tried to share the news, my mother patted my hand. "That's nice, dear. Now come help in the kitchen while the adults talk." I stopped talking after that. The silence became my armor. I poured every ounce of pain into Lumina. While they assumed I was struggling, I was scaling. Office in Midtown. Team hired. Ether signed. Forbes mentions. Private clients. Penthouse. Vacations to Santorini and the Maldives, none of which they knew because I never volunteered. The invitation to Sophia's rehearsal dinner arrived anyway. After years of distance, a stubborn spark of hope made me RSVP. I arrived deliberately 15 minutes late, wearing a black Chanel dress that cost more than most people's rent. Hair and makeup professionally done. Not for them, for the business leaders I knew would be there, including Marcus Langston himself. My mother spotted me first. "You're late," she hissed, pulling me aside. "And black? This is a celebration. Ava, not a funeral. Please don't talk about your little internet company tonight. It's Sophia's day." My father gave me a distracted nod and went back to networking. Sophia introduced me to Daniel as my sister who does online marketing or something. She's always been the creative one. I smiled tightly and found the bar. Scotch. Neat. The toasts began. Marcus stood, praised the couple, then turned the room toward me. The spotlight hit. He detailed my Ether campaign, my awards, his failed attempts to buy Lumina. He laughed warmly. "She's too busy changing the industry to take my money." The applause that followed was polite from some, genuine from the business people who actually knew my work. My family's faces were priceless: shock, disbelief, embarrassment. Sophia looked like she'd been slapped. My parents were speechless. As the evening continued, business cards flooded my hand. The CEO of a major bank wanted lunch. A publisher asked for an interview. Sophia cornered me by the dessert table. Voice strained. "Why didn't you ever tell us? Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. She had no answer. My parents approached next, moving like sleepwalkers. My mother hissed. "What kind of game is this?" My father demanded. "Why hide it?" I looked them both in the eye. "I tried telling you for years. You never listened. You never asked. You showed me every day, in 1,000 small ways, that I was the disappointment. The one who didn't measure up." They had nothing to say. The wedding the next day at St. Patrick's was flawless on the surface. I wore emerald green, grandmother's pearls. I smiled for photos, played the supportive sister. But the dynamics had shifted forever. Relatives who once ignored me suddenly wanted to talk business. My aunt asked if I'd help her daughter's boutique, then blinked when I said we were selective and had a waiting list. At the reception, Marcus introduced me to his wife and invited me to join the board of their family foundation focused on women in business. More doors opened in one evening than in years of grinding alone. My parents tried again, awkward apologies, claims they didn't know. I told them the truth. It wasn't sudden for me. It was 5 years of building in silence while they celebrated only Sophia. Sophia pulled me aside, tears in her eyes. "I never realized how much we hurt you." I accepted the words, but kept my distance. Trust, once eroded, takes time, if it returns at all. As I drove home that night in my Tesla, the city lights reflecting off the Hudson, I felt lighter. The secret was out. The pretense was gone. They finally saw me, not as the failure they imagined, but as the woman who built an empire while they weren't looking. The best revenge wasn't loud confrontation. It was becoming undeniable. In the months that followed, the overtures came, my father calling to ask genuine questions about my campaigns, my mother sending flowers with a note that simply said, "I'm listening now," Sophia inviting me to lunch. I remained cordial, guarded. The wounds were deep. Healing would be on my terms. 6 months later, Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Westchester. The table felt different. My mother asked detailed questions about my latest client. My father proudly told a colleague that his daughter was revolutionizing digital marketing. Sophia, now pregnant, asked for advice about balancing career and motherhood. When my mother raised her glass to family and to seeing each other clearly, I clinked mine against hers. It wasn't perfect. The years of dismissal couldn't vanish overnight. But it was a beginning. Later, helping clear dishes, my mother joined me in the kitchen. "I want to know everything now," she said softly. "Not because of Marcus Langston or your success. Because you're my daughter. And I've missed too much." For the first time in years, I saw real interest, no comparison. No dismissal. I set down the plate and began to talk. She listened without interrupting. As I drove back to Manhattan that night, the river glittering below my terrace, I realized the true value of my long silence. It had given me space to become who I was meant to be. And being finally seen fully, without condition, was worth more than any empire. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply growing too large to be diminished anymore.